Salutations, I am the Vengeful Vadim, and we'll be continuing our extensive overview of SPV3. Today's discussion will be covering the vehicles, equipment, and enemies that appear in this mod. If you haven't watched the first segment, please do so by clicking on the annotation before continuing on with this video. Once you're done, return here for the next part. Before we get to the subject matter at hand, I want to cover some things that I forgot to mention in part 1 where I talked about the weapons. This was pointed out to me by the lead designer of SPV3 himself, Masters Elite, so big shout out to him for letting me know what I missed, for enjoying part 1, and for working so diligently hard on this mod alongside the rest of SPV3's development team. Halo needed a campaign like this right now, especially with how the campaign for Halo 5 was handled, but that's a topic for another video. To start things off, explosive weaponry like the rocket launcher behave a little differently than their contemporary counterparts from the main games. Splash damage has been reduced slightly in favor of earning a damage boost for projectiles that make direct hits on their target. This promotes competent aiming skills as opposed to spray and pray tactics that the original damage model presented with us. The Brute Plasma Pistol's overcharged projectile has the ability to detonate dropped grenades, which can amplify its role as an area effect weapon exponentially depending on how many explosives are littered on the ground. Lastly, gravity grenades have the power to disable vehicles with an EMP blast upon final detonation. This really only works against slow vehicles like the Wraith or a vehicle that's unoccupied that has an elite charging for it, but it works nonetheless. Plasma grenades can EMP vehicles as well, which is a useful tactic when approaching a Wraith, just like with the gravity grenade. This is actually easier to pull off with the plasma thanks to its iconic ability to stick to targets. Now that we've covered what I missed, time to move on to the vehicles. The roster of vehicles in SPV3 is nearly the same as Combat Evolves in terms of what types of vehicles we have here, except with new variants for some and a couple of new vehicles entirely. Alongside this, a gameplay mechanic new to the Combat Evolved engine, thanks to the power of open source, makes its debut in the form of vehicle hijacking. People would have laughed at you 10 years ago if you suggested that Custom Edition could pull this off, but here we are, and it's glorious. Kicking off our list are the iconic Warthogs. We have our standard chain gun Warthog that we all know and love, the rocket Warthog that used to be PC multiplayer exclusive until now, and never before seen in vanilla Combat Evolved is the Goose Warthog that made its debut in Halo 2. Each Warthog, even the chain gun variant despite competing with two explosive counterparts, should not be underestimated. The chain gun Warthog does a decent amount of damage and is the most consistent choice out of the three since the Marine's ability to aim when using non-hit scat weaponry is kinda questionable at the most inopportune times. The rocket Warthog functions exactly like its multiplayer brother where it enables the user to fire 3 rockets semi-automatically before having to reload. Lastly, the Goose Warthog is essentially the strongest choice out of the three due to the high damage output in such a short amount of time. The Warthogs have 2 new features in SPV3, one of which is completely new to the Halo series. Unlike in vanilla Combat Evolved, Warthogs can now be destroyed along with the rest of the vehicle roster in the game. This forces the player to think critically on where to drive the vehicle to avoid as much unnecessary damage as possible, instead of just recklessly barreling through a crowd of enemies with next to no repercussions. The second, and most exciting new mechanic, is the ability to heal all the passengers with med packs. One push of the flashlight button and you, along with your squad of Marines, are back at full health. 343 should really be taking notes. I want this in Halo 6, please. The Goose is an entirely new vehicle to Combat Evolved. It combines a variant seen in both Halo 2 Anniversary's multiplayer and Halo 5 to create a bringer of death that eclipses both of them in viability and fun factor. Armed with 2 mounted grenade launcher assault rifles, the damage output on the Goose is absolutely insane. The grenades, in combination with the primary fire, dispatches groups of units in no time at all. It's extremely easy to wipe out an entire squad hopping out of a Phantom within a maximum of 2 seconds upon landing on the ground. This makes it the ultimate glass cannon of the vehicular arsenal of SPV3. The controls can be wonky at times, but it's going to be addressed in a patch coming out in the near future at the time this video gets uploaded. Sergeant Forge resurrected from the dead to recreate the mighty Grizzly tank. This was introduced in the first Halo Wars game and is set to make a return to Halo Wars 2 coming out next year. Compared to the Scorpion tank, the Grizzly has twice the power, twice the arsenal, and is just twice as fun to drive. It's mounted with twin tank cannons and twin machine gun turrets that just lay waste to anything that moves. At a distance, however, the weapons are inaccurate and travel at random distances just like how the Combat Evolved Scorpion behaves. But since you're firing 2 of everything, you're twice as likely to hit your target. There is a bug with the Grizzly that's annoying to deal with though. You can't aim and shoot directly behind you. You'll have to be facing forwards in order to land hits in the direction you want to aim. Hopefully this gets addressed in a patch. On the Covenant side, we have our iconic Ghost. It behaves just like you'd expect it to, only this time it has the ability to boost. a feature introduced in Halo 2. It was not used in Vanilla Combat Evolved. The boosting isn't perfect by any means. It goes way faster when you're in mid-air and enables you to go into places that you're not supposed to be in. However, it works way better than it used to when, The Wraith makes a return. There isn't much that needs to be said about the Wraith other than the addition of the twin plasma cannons that act as a secondary firing mode, much like the machine guns on the Grizzly. These plasma cannons were exclusive to Halo 2's Wraith tanks, but are only used by the AI and not for the player. Fortunately, we can use them to our advantage now. Unlike its counterparts from Halo 2 and onward, however, the Wraith lacks the ability to boost, but it's not a detrimental loss by any means. A second Wraith variant exists in the form of the Anti-Air Wraith. Like its Halo 3 counterpart, it shoots a barrage of fuel rods at a rapid succession that tears apart anything unfortunate enough to piss it off. Like its blue brother, it also has access to twin plasma cannons for a secondary firing mode. Something the Halo 3 version lacks is it had a plasma turret that needed a separate gunner to control the weapon. This is the first time in the Halo series, besides various custom edition maps that had the AA Wraith on them, that allows for the use of the AA Wraith without needing to glitch, like you needed to do in order to use one in Halo 3 and ODST. Another new feature for the Wraiths are passenger seats, which is a first for the Halo franchise. You can have a total of 4 Marines sit on the wings, and depending on the weapons they wield, you, along with your squad, can send the Covenant to oblivion with zero amount of effort. The Banshee makes an appearance in the mod as well. The one notable change it has to performance is that it's constantly moving forwards even when you're not manually accelerating, unlike in Vanilla Combat Evolved where it'll just fall to the ground with no input in the controls. The primary fire fires much slower as well, but is way more accurate than the original. A vehicle that was originally cut from Halo 1 is now usable in SPV3. The Shadow is the Covenant's answer to the Warthog. It has a mounted shade turret in the back as well as 2 passenger seats compared to the Warthog's 1 seat. Its wide frame makes it very easy to perform splatter kills. However, it's pretty slow unlike the Warthogs, so I wouldn't recommend solely using this as a battering ram since you are a much bigger and easier to hit target. It's best to have a gunner engage enemies from a distance so that you can avoid as much unnecessary damage as possible. This vehicle was shown during Halo 1's E3 2000 trailer, but it didn't make it into the final game. It would later evolve into the Spectre in Halo 2, which performs exactly the same as the Shadow but has the benefits of a booster like the Ghost. Now that we've covered the vehicles, we'll be moving on to equipment. This ranges from armor upgrades to various other utilities found around the levels. New to Custom Edition are the armor upgrades. They derive from the armor abilities seen in Halo Reach, but we call them upgrades rather than abilities in this mod because they aren't as crucial to the gameplay as they were in Reach, where it was required to have one in order to succeed in that game. In SPV3, however, the gameplay doesn't revolve around the use of armor upgrades and they are entirely optional in terms of potential usage. Still, they're valuable assets to take advantage of in many situations. Sprint is usable in this mod. Like its Reach counterpart, it gives you a temporary boost in speed but at the cost of not being able to use your weapon. This helps tremendously when attempting to take cover from a crowded firefight to regain shielding, or to assist you in hijacking an enemy vehicle. While Sprint is a controversial feature among the Halo fanbase, people need to remember that this is a campaign mod where Sprint doesn't really break the game like it would in a multiplayer setting, and you can just as easily survive in SPV3 without it. Returning from ODST in the form of an armor upgrade is Visor Mode. Upon activation, the world around you becomes highlighted with outlines surrounding every object on the map. Friendlies are enveloped in a green outline while enemies show up as red targets. Visor Mode is best used in darker spaces where it would be hard to see otherwise, but it's not impossible to use in broad daylight if you so choose. Health Regen as an armor upgrade is a unique concept to SPV3 and derives from the health system used in Halo Reach. When you're low on health, once your shield's fully recharged, you gain back a portion of your health, but you'll never be able to regen back to 100%. This allows for health packs to retain their relevancy in the sandbox, and forces the player to think critically about a given combat situation despite having the ability to regenerate health. Remember, there are no instances in the mod where you are truly invincible. It's a tough life on Installation 04, don't waste it. Besides armor upgrades, there are various utilities on each level that will aid you in various ways. The classic health packs, active camouflage, and overshield pickups make a return to the mod and work just like you'd expect them to with no changes to their usability. New to the Halo universe are recharge stations for plasma battery based weapons like the plasma rifle and focus rifle. They will slowly charge your weapon until it reaches full charge. Upon reaching 100% battery life, the weapon will overheat, so be wary of your surroundings if you happen to be in a firefight when trying to recharge. If you're fighting, it might be a better idea to simply pick up fallen Covenant weapons rather than risk becoming a stationary target. Radar enhancers upgrade your motion tracker to detect enemies that lay motionless, whereas they wouldn't appear on the tracker without it. This especially helps when trying to find the elite you brought the shields down on, since they usually like to duck for cover to recharge. The Covenant has received numerous visual and gameplay upgrades in SPV3. New to the enemies are moving mouthparts through their idle animations, something vanilla CE lacked, making the enemies feel more alive than ever. Even new enemies, some of which are new to Custom Edition entirely, join in on the killing frenzy. Returning members of the Covenant are the Grunts, Elites, Jackals, and Hunters. Grunts behave mostly the same as their CE counterparts, and have methane tanks that can be shot off their backs and can cause small amounts of damage to anyone in their blast radius, just like the Grunts from Halo 3. Elites remain mostly the same, but gain the ability to throw grenades way earlier in the game, whereas before, only Spec Ops elites are capable of doing that during the end of Halo 1. Jackals have more changes going for them. The standard defense gauntlet variants have access to plasma rifles as well as brute plasma pistols. A new variant of Jackal in the form of the Rangers make an appearance here. They specialize in long distance combat and use carbines and focus rifles. Jackals even have a new third person animation for spawning enemies. Hunters receive the most drastic change out of the returning enemy units. We have 3 variants with different designs and armaments for each version, along with the Hunters becoming much larger and having a second, quicker melee animation. They no longer fall to a single pistol shot, unfortunately, but they'll go down to a sniper round or a super combined explosion from any of the needlers. They even have new animations for getting angry, indicating that they're weakened to the point of near death. We have our standard fuel rod gun variant from the original Combat Evolved, an assault beam variant that was introduced in Halo 2, and a new variant that wields a shade cannon. All 3 of these hulking beasts are not to be underestimated. Brutes are a new enemy to Combat Evolved. The design and gameplay nature of these beasts are a diligent combination of the ones seen from Halos 2, 3, and Reach. They wield all of their weaponry made specifically for them, such as the Brute Shot and the Shredder. Ranking wise, we have the Miners, the Stalkers, which are the only variants that use shields, and the Captains. The dialogues used for Brutes are a combination of the Halo 2 Brutes dialogue and Halo 3's, but the lines from Halo 3 are reversed to make them feel more alien. Brutes have the weakness in that they're highly vulnerable to headshots, so you use any weapon like the battle rifle or carbine to dispatch them relatively quickly. Also a new enemy to Combat Evolved are the Skirmishers from Halo Reach, and they're just as deadly as their Reach counterparts. They have defense gauntlets on their arms as a small form of protection. They're also highly fast and pretty difficult to hit when they're on the move, so reuse headshot weapons to dispatch them quickly. The Skirmishers use mainly plasma pistols and needlers, but that's all they really needed to overwhelm the targets. Installation 04 now has a wildlife in the form of the Blind Wolves. They remain neutral, standing around while the UNSC and the Covenant duke it out. Until someone takes their Eggo waffles. Jenkins, for the love of God, give him the waffle, now!
But I already put my syrup on it. They can't have it now. That's the rule.
Jenkins. And that's it for part 2 of this extensive overview of SPV3. The next and final part will cover each of the released missions and how they have been changed since the original Halo. If and only if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that like button, and make sure to subscribe to ensure that you see the final installment of this 3-part series, as well as much more content on this channel. This is the Vengeful Vadim, and I'll see you on the great journey.
Shut down the security system.